Hello and welcome to a Hack Reviewer, where I find ROM hacks and review them like the total hack that I am. And today's video will be on Metroid Fusion for the NES. It dropped on romhacking.net on January 11th, 2023, and it was made by an individual who goes by kchrules. How good is this hack? How challenging is it? Who is it made for? Those questions I am here to answer today, and after getting the best ending, I feel I'm qualified enough to make this sort of subjective judgment. To start with the superficial elements, there really isn't much change. All the music and sound effects from the original are maintained. The only graphical changes are to Kraid and Ridley, being replaced by Arachnus and the SAX respectively. Palettes, though, were at least altered to give off a different vibe than the original. It is interesting how just a slight change in blue creates a completely different atmosphere right from the get-go, and that leads to a strong first impression overall. In general, I'll say the color palette is one of, if not the strongest element of this hack, which is a point of note since the creator's other project was a hack for Sonic the Hedgehog. On the page for it, there's one review, and the palettes were also a notable feature, so we can confirm that kchrules has a good eye for color. But I'm sure you care about that less than the actual appeal of this hack, and that's a loose adaptation of Metroid Fusion, which is an interesting concept in the grand scheme of things, primarily because Fusion has such a radically different design philosophy than the first Metroid. The original game is very open-ended with very little gatekeeping measures in place. Not even the Varia Suit or Screw Attack serve as a means to bar your progress, but instead rewards for meticulous play that make the overall experience easier. Same with the Wave Beam, but that is a major key difference in this hack wherein the Wave Beam is actually required to access an entire portion of the map. And this area right here is where I see everything falling into place. Just like Fusion, this hack is remarkably linear. Something I probably should have picked up on earlier since I made a map of like half the game. Going back to the Wave Beam though, this moment here is actually very relevant in the major event I was looking forward to in this adaptation the most. Just like in Fusion, you need the Wave Beam to access this door, the door you were never allowed to go through to reach the Metroid cloning facility. I would be lying if I said I didn't have a big grin on my face once I realized what was going on. Although my initial reaction was one of fear, you know, hearing the Torian music and seeing the Metroids. You do lack the Ice Beam here after all. But then it eventually hit me like a ton of bricks where I was. For sure my favorite moment in the entirety of this hack. It is pretty creative how kchrules used unique properties of the Wave Beam in a way more similar to Fusion here. A completely different form of utility going on, which I enjoy. The overall map design is rather pleasant. It pushes you where you need to go in ways more overt than the base Metroid does, reducing the pressure a lot of newcomers have to the NES original. I could go on forever about Metroid's subtle quirks and guiding hand, but this really isn't the place for that. Anyway. My primary complaint overall would be enemy placement sometimes. There are a few instances after stepping through a doorway I get greeted by a stupid zoomer coming in and introducing himself. Eventually I was able to dodge them, but the window for that is pretty narrow, so I feel a little more time to evade would be optimal. Better than some other moments where you just can't avoid certain googly-eyed obstacles whatsoever. Again, more strategic enemy placement would be preferred. Except for those minor issues, I would say the map design overall is competent. Oh, I see. Yeah, okay, this is an issue. Games aren't without bugs and glitches. This is a fact of life. ROM hacks are no different, but issues like this are why the whole medium has a bad reputation. Okay, time for some technical talk. We're performing surgery on this, and to do that, I'll need to explain how Metroid works as a game. In Metroid, doors serve a major purpose that isn't told to the player, but is vital to understand when playing, and that is doorways swap how the game scrolls. You see, in the original Metroid, the screen can only scroll vertically or horizontally in any given area, not both. What determines which way the game scrolls are the doorways. Here at the start of the game, you can only go left or right, and once you step through that doorway, you're met with a room that is one screen wide and scrolls vertically. This is also why between the long shafts in Brinstar, there are one screen-sized rooms separating them. Now Editroid, the primary ROM hacking tool for Metroid, has a patch built in that you can implement that changes how doorways function. It splits doorways into two types, and those are the ones that dictate whether or not the screen scrolls vertically or horizontally. So you see right here in Fusion NES, this doorway breaks up two vertical shafts. When you enter from the right, the screen scrolls normally, but if you were to go back through the doorway, the screen scrolls only horizontally, creating dead zones of pain and suffering. This is a really simple fix. Just make a copy of the room and change the door property here. Now, we can only truly speculate as to why this glitch exists, and I'll be completely honest with you in that I don't think it's overt laziness or incompetence. By looking at the credits on the romhacking.net page, we see the only person here is kchrules himself, meaning I can confidently assume that they were the only hand in this pie. This issue screams of having only one set of eyes in the project during testing, because logically speaking, there's no reason to go back through this door. You gain nothing for doing so. So, to a solo developer, this problem would be an easy oversight to make, and when you're creating a legally dubious free project by yourself, it can be quite a challenge to get other people to test it, especially for a game with the reputation Metroid has in the current year. So when I make this criticism now, I'm not doing so out of malice or spite. I am 100% sympathetic to the plight of the solo ROM hacker. So dear viewer, keep this disclaimer in mind going forward, because there are a few more issues that need to be addressed in regards to the base functionality of the game. Now, this hack can be completed from beginning to end, but there are a few softlock situations or general small issues in which I reluctantly implore you to use save states. I personally don't like save states myself, but I did have to use 2 over the course of my playthrough. The first is right after the Metroid cloning facility, and the second right before the final boss. Now let's address why. Once you enter the small zone which houses the SAX, a reskin of Ridley, you're met with this Desgiga? Desgiga. By killing this lone little dude, you get the victory fanfare and missile upgrade for beating a boss, and continuing forward, the SAX will not spawn. Off the top of my head, the only thing that I can think of that could cause this is probably in relation to where the enemy stands in the room. This is where my hacking knowledge becomes more cloudy, but I believe that having an enemy in the same zone share certain coordinates with the boss will end up having them flagged as the boss itself. Let's see here. There. By moving the Desgiga to where we cannot kill it, the SAX now spawns. This creates a mild musical glitch, but I can live with that. Now, the other issue that crops up between here and the final area is one that soft-locked me in my first run of the game. The section of the hack from the SAX to Mother Brain is essentially one big hallway that eventually leads to this room here. The scrolling stops dead in its tracks, and the design is indeed guiding me through that door, but I'm a very curious person and I just had to see what happened. So I jumped into the void and caused the screen to wrap, which unfortunately put me right around here in these blocks with no actual way to escape. What caused this is actually a tad silly. Opening this up in Metroid, we can take note that the room uses a certain pre-made layout that others do. Okay, to elaborate for the uninitiated for a second, Metroid is a stitched together Frankenstein's monster of pre-made room layouts. This is why one of the common complaints is how similar areas can appear. Nintendo are remarkably efficient at what they do, and this sort of design philosophy extends to Zelda 2 as well. And is also why we made a copy of that room earlier, so we could have a duplicate to be a quick fix without changing the level design. By using a layout intended to have an area above it, means this room doesn't have a roof, while also being at the top of the map. My fix here would be making a new room layout that shares the idea behind the one used here, but giving it a roof to prevent accidental escape from the corporeal realm. I mention these glitches and how to fix them for one primary reason, and I am making a patch for this hack to distribute to you all. Now this patch is only here for big fixes and is not going to change any of the core design elements, even the ones I personally dislike and which I'll highlight later. As well, we'll only fix the ones that are within my general capability, since there is a major one I have no idea how to remedy, and that's the glitch in the final area. Okay, so this is my what were they thinking situation type deal. Probably the worst thing of the original Metroid in my opinion is the fight with Mother Brain. She is an absolutely awful confrontation, so my general thought process would be to not make this battle any worse than the original. Except, kchrules put this section right here in front of Mother Brain, making landing shots without taking damage much more challenging. To give credit, reaching Mother Brain herself is actually much easier than the original. But the actual fight itself feels really unfun, and also resulted in the only death I got that wasn't the result of a bug. Causing me to get soft-locked. You respawn in a room with 3 Metroids, and after I killed them, I walked through this door, the final boss music started playing, and then the game crashed. This, I have no idea how to fix off the top of my head. So instead, I'll say just make a save state at the entrance to the fight, and you should hopefully be fine if you have enough E-tanks. With all this in mind, I can still say the hack was a really entertaining and overall enjoyable experience. And I hope me highlighting these issues taught you something about how Metroid works under the hood, since this is a game I'm very passionate about. And before I hit the conclusion section, I do want to give a proper congratulations to kchrules himself for finishing a ROM hack. Regardless of its state, making one of these is no small feat, and I feel the need to recognize that. You did a good job, and I hope one day I can do similar in my own ventures. Now, to answer the questions I posited at the start of the video. How good is this hack? I will say it's an overall decent experience. The act of adapting Metroid Fusion, within the confines of the original Metroid, is an undertaking for sure, and many of these rooms do get across that idea. Some minor frustrations aside, I can say I had a more positive experience than negative one. How challenging is this hack? Metroid Fusion, for the NES, is significantly less difficult than either of the games that make up its DNA. The world is more linear and readable than Metroid, while the combat is in general more relaxed than Fusion. The only notable spike in difficulty was against the final boss. And finally, who is this hack for? I would recommend this entertaining little outing to fans of either of those two games I mentioned earlier, as long as you go in with the correct mind frame. If you aren't a fan of NES Metroid, then you might have some issues with the game, but overall it is more digestible. And to the fans, I'll say this is a less mentally taxing game to map out, since it follows a lot of Fusion's design philosophy. Now, this hack reviewer gives it a 5.5 out of 10. Let's be clear though, I ain't going by the rules implanted in us by the school system. 5 out of 10 is flat out okay, so 5.5 sits in the green as a positive experience. The big thing I can say is that I don't think it should be your first hack to play, since there are a handful out there that are really impressive. But if you want one with a vanilla flavoring that won't eat up too much of your life, then this is one for you. Now, dear viewers, see you later for whatever hack I want to discuss next. Wow, finally another scripted video done. At least for me, it was a monumental ordeal. In the pursuit of ever higher quality, I ended up encountering a problem. I became painfully aware of mouth noises when I'm recording. Even now, when recording this, I find it inescapable, and it's driving me completely insane. But then I'll hear it in, other YouTubers' videos, even ones that have, tons of subscribers. I hear it too now, and it's completely destroyed my brain. And due to my work schedule, I struggle to find the time to record, re-record in a really dedicated manner. I'm doing my best though, and hopefully I can fall into a flow where I can continually make stuff where I feel like I have some amount of pride in, and hopefully someone out there enjoys it. So yeah, see you next time.